Garth Brooks is cool.
Oh, right.
In
I
case you didn't
watched your
know.
video on that.
I learned that from you. I didn't know Garth Brooks was
Yes.
cool until that. Yeah,
I'm
I had
glad
to
I
watch
came across this
the
because
show.
I grew up loving Garth Brooks. Like he was like country music was my dad. He's big into country music, so I grew up like listening to a lot of country music, and Garth Brooks was always my favorite. And turns out he's like the one out of like three country music people who are actually cool. So
That was
it was really good to see he
video.
came out in support of diversity. An actual quote, he says he thinks diversity is the solution to our problems. And this goes to him getting backlash for serving Bud Light at his bar in Tennessee. So the right wing is still freaking out about Dylan Mulvaney having a single sponsored post, who's a trans influencer, a single sponsored post on Instagram back, was it a month ago, 2 months ago now? They're still freaking out about this. And so Garth Brooks is getting a lot of hate for still selling Bud Light. And he's like, hey, I love diversity. And then he also goes on to say that it's also a business and people like Bud Light. So like, what's the problem? So yeah. And then on top of that, I also learned that he canceled on an Ellen DeGeneres appearance because of the strike. So in support of the striking workers, he's also a union man, pro-union, pro-trans. This is a country music idol here, a legend, and here he is blazing trails. Really good to see.
Yeah, that video, David, was very good for my mental health. Anyone who's having a very difficult pride, go watch David's video on Garth Brooks, because it was nice to see just somebody who you wouldn't necessarily expect to be such a strong ally is an ally. And you pointed out that his sister is a lesbian, which definitely probably helped him with that. So yeah, that was a great video. I think that the nickname for Garth Brooks lovingly should now be Girth Brooks because he's a Chad, because of the support. and one thing that I'll say also go ahead.
He's also been this way for his entire career. Like one of his biggest songs in the early, like in 1992, my video I covered this. He had a song called "We Shall Be Free," which is it's pro-gay rights. We're talking about 92, guys.
That's crazy.
Pro-gay rights, a country music song. It's pro-love, pro-environment, and a lot of radio stations wouldn't carry it. So it didn't do that well in the charts, even though it's a great song. Didn't do that well in the charts because of that. But he was like, he was actually at the time surprised by the backlash because he's like, what, you're against loving people? Like you're against people loving who they choose? Like what's wrong with you? So he's been, he has not backed down despite it even impacting his career in some ways. And then he had in 2000, he had a concert with George Michael that was in support of gay rights. Again, the year 2000, we're talking, again, over a decade before gay marriage was legalized. So he's been on this for a while. So it was also kind of surprising to see anyone was shocked by where he stands on this. But it was good to see him come out and support that.
I want to know from Matt Binder, because he's really good with numbers and stuff. Can you explain how stock value works and why the actual protests against Anheuser-Busch actually are nonsense? Because I'm looking at it. If you look at the actual stock value for that company in September, they're at a fucking drop. It's a plummet, and then now they seem to be going back up. So what's going on there? Is the protest working? Is the right winning?
I mean, stock value doesn't really correlate all the time necessarily with revenue in terms of like how sales are at that moment. You have to remember that the stock price isn't based on like how much Bud Light is selling. The stock price is based on how many investors are buying and selling Anheuser-Busch stock. If they choose to sell because of because they think a Bud Light protest is going to affect the company and in turn affect the stock, then I mean that's how the Bud Light protest will affect the value of Anheuser-Busch stock. But if the investors just think like this will all just blow over and they don't sell the stock and even just buy more, then it doesn't correlate. Like people have to remember that stock, like what the stock value is just like who's buying and selling, like how many people are buying or selling the stock in that particular period of time. It's not, oh, the company is, revenue is declining, and so their stock value goes down. I mean, it could correlate, again, if investors decide to sell off because of the revenue issue. But if they don't, then it doesn't affect anything. And you remember, investors have all sorts of reasons for selling off stock and for buying stock. They have access to, all sorts of various different paperwork, being that these are registered securities. Getting a little dig in at the unregistered securities that got called out by this SEC and on Coinbase and Binance, but that's crypto. I mean, they can see what the company thinks their growth will be, and where the opportunities will be, and where their weaknesses are. And if they look at all that stuff and think these protests won't have much of anything to do with it, then it just won't affect the stock. And this fluctuates too. It's up and down. Like, stocks go up and down all the time. Like if it completely plummets, then yeah, you have an issue. But going down like a couple bucks one day and going up the next day and then going down the next day, this is normal fluctuation in the market.
So you're saying go woke, go broke isn't real?
I mean, it's not, obviously. I mean, I guess it could if the protests actually grow because the right is so upset over these culture war issues. But I don't think, I mean, I think what we saw with the Bud Light thing is that it probably is one of their more successful things, and not because of the stock market value, but because of the fact that I guess the beer is not as popular as it was in terms of raw sales. But I mean, it was the #1 beer in the country. They're not like hurting. They're just not #1 anymore. There's a big difference between like, oh, we're not selling beer anymore, and just, oh, we're still selling a shit ton of beer, but just not the most like we used to.
They're going to roll out J.K. Rowling to be the new spokesperson.
Like, it'd be like, I don't know. I'm trying to think like, the fastest person on the planet, everyone knows, is Usain Bolt. Now imagine someone one year outdid him by a second. You wouldn't be like, ooh, Usain Bolt lost it. He's not one of the fastest people in the world. No, he's just not the #1 anymore. He's still fucking faster than everybody else.
You can age.
Child. So what else is in there?
Yeah, what else?
Oh, wait, and it should also be pointed out. It should also be pointed out that the beer that beat Bud Light now, Modelo, the #1 beer in the U.S. now, it's also owned by Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah,
so I mean,
it doesn't matter to them because they own like half the market anyways. They don't fucking care.
Yeah, it's like oh no, Bud Light's not #1 anymore. Congratulations, Modelo, you're #1 now, and it's all in the same room with the same people doing this. Like.
I just don't understand why you would want to drink beer when fruity drinks exist. I don't get it personally.
Because they give you headaches. That's why. Beer, I get less headaches from beer than sugary drinks, for sure.
That's a good point. Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point. As I get older, I can't tolerate liquor as well. And I think the sugary vodkas that I drink are probably not helping. So, okay. That makes sense. Good answer.
Also, I don't really care about how the alcohol industry does. So if the right wants to take them down, feel free. If the right wants to go after Lockheed Martin for their pride float, please go after Lockheed Martin. Take on all these companies, please. Right.